Good morning, everyone. We're here today with Angus Scott, who has set up the petition to challenge the proposal to give Tony Blair a knighthood. So, Angus, very good to see you today. If you'd like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself and explain what drew you to set this petition up.
Indeed, thank you, and thank you very much indeed for inviting me to talk to you. As you know, I'm Angus Scott. I'm just a very ordinary citizen of this country. I have no political background. I am, Mr. Nobody from nowhere, but I'm also a very angry citizen. And on New Year's Eve, when this announcement was made, I was incensed that a man like Tony Blair, with everything that we know about him and his legacy and all the decisions that he made, is given the highest honour of this nation. It's people have expressed it way more eloquently than me, but we all know the reasons why we're all incensed. And I think 1 million plus people clearly have sent the very same message as myself.
Thanks very much, Angus. It seems clear that there is support and interest in this argument from all different sides of the political spectrum. What's your thoughts on actually uniting people that may have lots of different sort of political ideas and views, but would all agree on this subject? What would you think about that, and what's your aspirations for the petition and actually bringing people together on a point through it?
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent question, because the one thing that has struck me, and I think it's struck the media as well, is the depth of feeling is so powerful, but it's not just from one section of society. It is right across the whole spectrum of society, not just politically. I'm getting messages and emails from, with all due respect, from the middle-aged ladies from the middle class in the shires who have no interest in politics whatsoever, but are saying, thank you for giving me a voice, because it's such a profoundly, deeply wrong decision. So the powerful thing of the message is that it's not just coming from one section. It is coming from the left, from the right, and everywhere in between, and every other part of society. And we're all united on that one single message. And it's interesting that I think George Galloway himself said a very interesting phrase that resonates certainly with me, and I think with a lot of people out there, is that it's not so much left and right anymore. It's right and wrong. And the people of this country have a very strong sense of what is right and what is wrong. And very unsurprisingly, society out there has said, this is wrong. So, where does it go from here, and what are the aspirations? I think it's clear from what I understand, from a constitutional perspective, it's very difficult for the Queen to actually rescind this award. I think we don't have a written constitution, but it's, should we say, convention. And a lot of Blair's supporters say it's convention, it must go ahead. Well, fine. The Queen's not wrong, the convention's wrong, but that's another issue. So I think it's fair then to divert attention away from, okay, let's assume we can't rescind it. It's not Her Majesty's fault. She is bound by convention to do this. Don't forget, Her Majesty has done decades of sterling service. She's never put a foot wrong. So let's turn the attention instead to the recipient and Mr. Blair himself. Now, Mr. Blair's supporters are very vocal, very vociferous in saying Mr. Blair is a principled and honourable man. Fine, okay, let's take your word for that. And let's look to Mr. Blair and say, do the honourable thing. Turn it down, because it is in his gift, it is in this man's power to prove that he is an honourable man. Save the Queen's blushes, assuage the pain of the families of the royal of the forces, all the 1 million plus people who signed this petition angry. It assuages their pain, and likewise the people that support your party who have their own reasons for this. And I think it's very important that we now start potentially focusing on Mr. Blair to say, look, please do the honourable thing. Prove your critics wrong, prove your supporters right, and turn this down. So, and if I then may just go on then to potentially the next steps, I think most people assume that he won't do the honourable thing. So what happens next? Well, it's very easy for something like this to fade away. And it's very important that all of us from all sections supporting this make sure we maintain the momentum and keep it in people's minds. What encourages me is it's 14 years ago since Tony Blair was Prime Minister, and look at the depth of feeling a decade and a half later. That's how powerful and deep the the passion and the hatred is for this man throughout society. So I'm confident that we will maintain this. It may slip from the news, but it's still very much there in people's minds and hearts. So I think it's not unreasonable to think and hope that, like the Iraq War in 2003, which I personally was profoundly against, and I have a background to some degree in the forces. I was in the Territorial Army, and I was out there marching saying, this is morally wrong. I think we should reflect that same feeling that when it comes to the day that Tony Blair is awarded this honour by, presumably, Her Majesty the Queen, probably I imagine it's be Prince Charles, because I can't honestly believe the Queen would want to give this, but that's never for me to be so presumptuous as to claim her feelings. But anyway, on the day, I think it is perfectly reasonable for people to get out of their houses and to march in those streets, to get our voices not just heard online now, but actually out there in the streets. And it's very interesting that I had conversations. Obviously, I am nobody. I'm just the messenger. But a lot of people, just as a point of focus, have come to me and said, "We're angry. We want our voices heard. We want to have a march. We want to go out there on the day and just say to the public, this is wrong." And I think it is a very good aspiration for us all now to start thinking about, okay, let's start mobilizing this nation like we did in 2003. Let's channel that anger, that motivation into getting people out onto the streets. And one thing I would very powerfully add to this, and I plead to everybody involved in this, what gives this whole issue power is that it's not just one small section of society, it is every section of society, which therefore means, by definition, there will be people out in the streets demonstrating who are diametrically opposed to each other on every other issue. That's fine, we're all human beings, we all have different opinions about different things. I think it's very important that we forget all that. We are all united. This is all about what's right and what's wrong, and on that we are all profoundly and deeply united. So let's get out there. Let's stand shoulder to shoulder on the right, on the left, in the middle, whatever it is, whatever. The armed forces are obviously passionate about this. Let's all just stand shoulder to shoulder, united, sending out this message. So please don't let any other issues cloud this, because they will be exploited, I have no doubt, by Mr. Blair's supporters. They will exploit it ruthlessly to try and break us apart. They're going to have a very difficult job, actually, because we are all so deeply, deeply passionate about this one thing.
That's great. Thanks very much, Angus. It's something that, it speaks to me as well in this time where so much of our activity, conversations and communications has been, necessarily pushed onto this online sphere over the last 2 years. And that actual tradition and, like you say, the mobilizing of people to actually go out there into the real world and be on the streets to show and share their views, I think is something really important, and that we, the Workers' Party, would certainly support that. And of course, we're always looking for things which are, a point of argument, a viewpoint, which sometimes things come up like this, and you can see this has got the ability to unite people beyond these kind of little boxes that, these days often people get divided into, where they, are kind of pushed into only really being able to agree with people that agree on every single point that you think or believe, So being able to bring people together on a broad sort of basis like this has got its own strengths and things that I think are what you really look for a healthy society and a movement of people that are engaged in political, the political life of the country, essentially, and actually have a stake and be able to have some agency in things. So yes, we'd certainly support bringing people together from all different political backgrounds if there was the opportunity for a
I think if I may just jump in, I think you've raised a very, very interesting point there, and it's actually moves slightly away from the central issue, but it is related to some degree. It's very clear to me that there is a very powerful movement, force, whatever you want to call it, that is trying to divide our society through identity politics, whatever you call it. It's the whole policy behind it is to divide and conquer. It's dividing the left, it's dividing all of us. It's deeply dangerous because it's turning people against each other. It's using this really dangerous argument that, yeah, we all have our differences, but if you don't address somebody with the right terminology, suddenly they're offended and there is a division, there is an argument, there's confrontation. That is a really dangerous force, and it's very deliberate because it's trying to divide all of us on the left, on the right, everywhere. And it makes it very easy for people like us who get it wrong, as we will. We're just ordinary people. We can't keep up with, and they deliberately make it as confusing as possible just to make sure that we can't keep up with it. So we continually get it wrong. We get tripped up. So they can turn on us, this pre-programmed mob. And we see it all across the media now, everywhere. This pre-programmed mob just close people down, close down their voice, whatever their view is. I don't care what the view is, but they have a right to express it. And what the effect it's having, it's stopping people speak. People are becoming afraid to speak up. And this is, I don't know where it's coming from, but it's infected every part of our society, our politics, everything. It's deeply dangerous, it's deeply damaging, and it's killing democracy. Because every point, and it actually comes back to Blair and the reasons why I'm so motivated. All of us, most of us, agree that every section of our society should have a voice. They should have representation. They should feel individually that you have a say, albeit very small, whatever, you're only a single person, but each one of us should have an equal say in the direction and the governance of this country and society. When Tony Blair, for example, became Prime Minister, I was a relatively young man. I was at the time a conservative voter. I'm not now, but at the time, as a conservative voter, I thought, hang on, this guy no more represents the working class than Boris Johnson does now, And it screamed at my sense of fairness, saying, hang on, we've now got a House of Parliament that's got two sides of the same coin. There's no opposition. Who's speaking up for the working class? And that really, really angered me. That's what, actually, I have to credit Tony Blair for getting my interest in politics, because that motivated me to want to get into politics so I could get into the House of Parliament and just go into this guy and say, you are a hypocrite. You're not representing the people you claim to represent. And we only need to look at what he's done since leaving office. He's gone off. I mean, what actually has he been selling? This grubby salesman, what actually has he been peddling to all these nefarious despots around the world? He's not discovered anything. He's not created or invented anything. He's not cured cancer. What actually is this man selling that he's now accumulated this fortune? A socialist? Do me a favor. It's things like that. It's just the hypocrisy. And by background, I'm a capitalist, but actually I'm a hybrid. I think both systems are deeply flawed. But for me, for your party particularly, and the people that you represent, it's a slap in the face. I think it's disgusting, because your voice should be heard just as much as everybody else's voice in Parliament. That's my personal opinion.
Well, thanks very much, Angus. Yeah, I mean, I'd look at this as being something that, for all these attempts and ways that people are being able to be divided on all sorts of issues and levels at the moment, that this, is something that could really bring people together that, as you say, will not agree on all sorts of things. But the things that we do agree on, that we can have unity on, those are the things that we really need to
absolutely
and take and make, putting first and foremost, front and centre.
I think, again, sorry to jump in, but I think reading your manifesto, 80% of that manifesto, probably the majority of the country would agree with. The only difference is the methodology. How do we get to that? That's the reality. We all, it's a public disgrace that we have people sleeping in the streets. I challenge anybody out there in this country to say otherwise, that we've got people earning vast fortunes, have portfolios of property, and we've got people sleeping in the streets. I say that as somebody who's right to centre. It's wrong. So, I think your manifesto is absolutely laudable, apart from a few sections which I philosophically disagree on, but that's the same. And it's great that we can have grown-up discussions about this, because we're not divided, we're united on many things, and it's fabulous that we've all been drawn together on this one thing, because hopefully it might spawn some bigger, more grown-up conversations about other issues.
That's it, exactly. I mean, even where there are points that, you know, people maybe will never agree on fully, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
it seems
Yeah,
to me that the vast majority of the things that are important about how we're looking about society, class, you know, these are things that the majority of people will agree on in the main. So yeah, I mean, let's look to this as, you know, something to help with that job of actually uniting people around something that's important, and not being pulled apart and set against each other at every turn, by lots of, you know, little kind of disagreements and things that, you know, we might not ever agree on. But thank you very much for speaking to us, Angus. We support the petition, of course. Our members will continue to promote this, and share it on social media. And of course, anyone else who is watching today, please do, if you want to just give a little plug to where they can find the petition, we'll put it in the comments of the video as well.
Yes, indeed. And I'll just, first of all, just take the opportunity to thank you and your party and your supporters personally from the bottom of my heart for all your support. It is just so meaningful. You know, it's warmed me, and on behalf of everybody else who signed this, to thank you guys as well for all the campaigning that you've done. It's just fabulous. I can take no credit for this. I am literally just purely the guy who was lucky enough to get in there first to sort this out. I've done nothing. It's you guys who've done this, and I'm just so moved actually and overwhelmed by how great all of you are, and it's wow, thank you so much. But anyway, all that aside, yes indeed, I think if you just Google change.org, the website is change.org, and I think it's actually unfortunately I haven't got the link, but anyway, the link's below. If you Google Angus Scott petition, it comes up. I think it's one of the first ones that come up. There are a few others. Please don't channel, nothing wrong with anybody else's, but we need to get as many on one petition as possible, so make sure you get the right one. And just again, thank you so much to each and every one of you who signed this. Please push this as wide. We've got to get to 2 million now.
Thanks very much, Angus. Yeah, there we are. You heard it, folks. Let's get there and get it up to that number. That's great. All right. Well, thank you very much, and hope to speak to you again sometime.
Indeed. Thanks very much indeed, Rob.